Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmie Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co-host Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity. Well, hello there, legacy leaders. We are on episode 13, so thank you for joining us. And when I say we, this is your boy, Jimmie Gonzalez Jr., your co-host, along with my man, Anthony Devon Watts Jr.
Yes, sir.
A.k.a. leadership docent. And we're really excited about not just this episode, but the next few episodes. We've been kind of on a nice little rhythm, and we have 3 sessions that we are really, really looking forward to, starting with this episode and then leading up to 14 and 15, and then the next NBA session, which would be our 4th installment. So really quickly, in this particular episode, we're going to be talking about employee engagement behaviors. And again, that's really going to take us over the next few episodes as we break down leadership expectations. And we feel like there's really 3 parts of that: employee engagement behaviors, continuous improvement, and then integrity. So over the next few episodes, stay tuned, because we'll be breaking each one of those down per episode. But today, again, we will be focusing on employee engagement behaviors and kind of 3 tenets of that. But before we jump into that, remember, number 1, make sure that you subscribe, download the podcast, wherever platform you're listening to us. We appreciate that. Hit that button. Hit the little bell as well. That way, if you're watching on YouTube, you're always alerted for new videos. We appreciate that. And then number 2, take that screenshot, man. Take a screenshot. If you're listening to the podcast, take the screenshot on your phone. If you're watching on YouTube, take a screenshot. Then go over to Instagram and post it in your stories and tag us. That's all we're asking you to do. Screenshot, post in stories, and tag. You do that, appreciate that very much. And really, we're just looking for feedback. That way, as we're doing this podcast and we're having conversations, like, it just lets us know that you're listening, that you're riding with us. If you want to leave us comments and let us know, what resonated with you the most in the episode, that would always be cool as well. And then number 3 is share. Sharing is caring. So share the episode with your friends, your family, and again, any other leaders out there that like they need to be a part of this legacy leader tribe. So put them on, share the podcast, let them know what's good. And I'm sure that we'll make a believer out of them as well. So that's what you can expect over the next few episodes. Again, we're excited to dive into that. So, but as always, I'd like to just chop it up for a minute and see how my man is doing over here. So what's good, bro? How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Actually, I was just thinking, man, because I know we had a little bit of run up before we actually started the intro, right? Before we actually started the intro, just talking about sports, man. I was just thinking about how good it feels like, football season is back, people. It's back. All is almost right with the world. I won't say is right with the world, but almost right with the world. Things are getting a little bit sweeter. But I think, matter of fact, last week, yeah, this last week when you had the convergence of football was on and basketball was on. So the NBA was on, the NFL was on, tennis was going. I think
Got
they
golf,
had
you got
golf
hockey going on.
hockey.
Yeah.
It was just the first time all of the sports converged, bro. I promise you, I think there's only been 2 moments in my life I've shed tears of joy, and that was when my son was born. And this past day when all the sports converged. I was just in my car on the ride home. I was just like, thank you, Lord, thank you. They're all here, right? So, man, I'm super excited to get back in the football season, even though you and I talked about how our teams took some L's very early on. Again, this is not a sports podcast, but
we are sports lovers.
And so it's going to come up. And
yes.
So that soured my mood just a little bit. But outside of that, man, everything was good, man. We just came back from Orlando. We spent time. So we had family that was throwing a birthday party for our youngest cousin Trey, who just turned 3. So it's fitting Trey turned 3, right? But I was going into it, to be honest with you, like full of optimism and hope, because like low key, I enjoy sometimes going to like the little like kid, birthday party events and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like when it's like trampolines, like airheads or something like that. I'm like, all right, bet I'm gonna be jumping around. Uh-huh. I can go to trampoline. I'm gonna play dodgeball, right? So unbeknownst to me, the venue of choice was Monkey Joe's. And for those who do not have kids or do not know anything about Monkey Joe's is strictly for children. Like as soon as I got so much energy. We drove up to Orlando. I got the kids unpacked, right? We're walking. I'm pushing the stroller. Can't wait. Oh, there's a door. All right, bet we're gonna go in here. Me and Gio gonna have a blast. I'll spend some time with Lennox. Right? We go in. I look up. I'm at the desk to check in, right? I'm giving my name, and while she's writing stuff down and getting ready to give us our bracelets, I just look at the sign behind her, and in big red letters, right at the bottom, it's like, no adults allowed on the equipment, like, at all. You can help your kids to the equipment, but no jumping or anything like that. And instantly I was deflated, and I knew it was going to be a long day. Especially because, I was talking to the missus about this, the birthday party started at, 5, 5 p.m. Like, what 3-year-old birthday party starts at 5 p.m. at night? Like, this boy ain't turning up in the club? Like,
yeah, it's supposed to be afternoon, 12, 1 o'clock.
Yeah, everybody knows, after 5 o'clock. That's adult time. So, after 5 o'clock, so you set it for after 5 o'clock, and it's not even an adult activity that I can participate in. Right, so I'm literally just sitting here held hostage in the Monkey Joe's, playing chaperone, watching these boys run around, monitoring Gio to make sure he's wearing his mask, and Lennox keeps trying to escape from the toddler zone. Right, so I'm sitting here playing with him in the toddler zone, and he's climbing up the slides and throwing stuff around and stuff like that, and then he'll just take off a full sprint trying to leave the toddler zone and break free, like jailbreak. I'm like, I gotta run him down, right? And so anyway. I spent my weekend doing that, and just kind of was it's I had so much hope, and then I had a little bit of a letdown. I was like, oh man, I ain't even get to bounce and do dodgeball and none of that. So
none of that. I've been there once.
Sports saved it.
I hear you. I've been there once, and I don't even think they had really good video games to play.
No.
It was all bad.
No.
All bad.
All bad. The best thing they had going for them, they had some pretty good French fries. But they had French fries, but no ketchup. Literally, so I ordered French fries, right? And, you would think that's something that they tell you just about the condiments and stuff like that, the situation, but obviously they wanted to sell, so I'm asking for the French fries. All right, cool. I'm sitting here waiting. All right, I leave. All right, I'm going to call you back. Anthony, can you come? I come back, right? I come back. And then, I'm waiting. She gives me my fries. I'm like, all right, bet. Ooh, I got fries, right? I'm like, hey, you got any? She's like, I'm sorry, we don't have any ketchup. I didn't even get to finish asking. You knew I was going to want ketchup. And you had no. She's like, no, we don't. She's like, but we got some other sauces, I can give you instead, to offset it. Do you want, ranch, blue cheese, honey mustard, barbecue sauce, sweet Thai chili? Right, because it was for their wings, right? So I'm annoyed because none of those are close to ketchup. I'm like, man, give me the sweet Thai chili. And so I ate my French fries and the sweet Thai chili, and
that was fun.
So that was pretty good. But yeah, outside of that, it was pretty disappointing. But that was my weekend, man. How was your weekend, man?
The weekend was good. I did not, even though I was very happy, I did not shed any tears of joy. But my moment was watching the first. I think this was on Sunday. I definitely watched my Irish play on Saturday. I can't remember, but all I remember is I'm sitting there watching the football. My wife was around, and it's just one of those plays where the running back is, they kind of hit the hole, they make it past the defensive line, and you kind of see them going into a pile, and all of a sudden, you just see him completely, he didn't break, he completely stopped and went backwards. What? And the hit was just tremendous. And I'm like, yes. That's football. And I just took like this deep breath. I'm like, oh. And I had this smile on my face, and she just turned around. She looked at me. I'm like, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Things are good.
Exactly. Things are good. Things are good. So very happy that football is back. And yeah, excited to see, obviously everything is just a little weird right now with everything that's going on. But it'll be interesting to see how the season plays out in college and in NFL. So, yeah, and besides that, the season was good. The weekend was good. Had some positive things going on. I told you earlier, church was good. We got the new chapel that we've opened up. So, like I said, that's been lit. So a good weekend overall. And then getting ready for this weekend, my mother-in-law is coming to town. Nice. Shout out to Judy. I don't think she listens to the podcast, but
we're gonna shout out anyway.
Yeah, she's a fan. She's a fan anyway. And yeah, my mother-in-law's turning 75, bro. So
bless him, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. So she's gonna be here and spend like a week with us. Excited about that and helping her.
You plan on cooking or anything like that?
I'm sure we will. I know we're going to take her out. She wants to go to Santiago Bodega, where Christian works. So we'll take her out there for her birthday. And I mean, she loves to cook. So I'm sure she'll be cooking, and I'm sure we'll do some cooking as well. Probably do some more barbecuing and stuff like that. So yeah, so looking forward to the weekend, man, and more football. So
yes, sir.
And we're getting further along in the NBA playoffs, so that's pretty good too. But again, this is not a sports podcast, so
no, it's not. This is not a sports podcast.
I digress there. But it kind of is somewhat wrapped up in leadership.
Leadership's a sport. I don't know. You guys
figure it out.
That works. Leadership's a sport. I don't know. Whatever.
I think we are, I think we are excited about the next few episodes and leading up to the next NBA session. But, I'm not trying to move on too fast because the last one that we just had was pretty fire with Dave Perez. We've been getting a lot of great feedback over the last few days. So again, just some good momentum, and even some of the things that we're going to touch upon today will connect to that last conversation, and again continue to build on this path that we've been on. So we're going to be talking today, guys, about employee engagement behaviors and really 3 specific tenets of that. So culture, organizational behavior, and employee development. And then, how do we make sure that we're recognizing the value of employees, prioritizing their development, because that's important, and not just career development, but skill development, knowledge development. And then how do we, we talked about in past episodes about empowerment and the 4 P's of the recipe to empowerment, but how do we empower them to solve problems, as we go through this? So we're going to start off with culture. And, one of the things that you had mentioned to me, I think might be a good place to start, is that when you think about culture itself, it's the people and it's the leaders that truly make up the culture. Regardless, the core values, kind of the mission statement, those things are important, but it's really the people and the leaders that make up the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you're right. It is important to start there, because I think the thing we're really trying to, we want to drive home as we have these discussions, with our legacy leaders is what are some of the foundational tenets that you have to deliver on as a leader when it comes to driving engagement. Mm-hmm. And so it absolutely does start with culture. And I think oftentimes, especially with, I wouldn't even say just new leaders, I think, just leaders in general, because I've seen people from varying degrees of their leadership walk have this thought process, right? Especially if they're coming into an organization for the first time, which is the culture. Like the culture is already established. The culture exists, right? And I just got to come in. I got to learn the pillars or the circles or the whatever thematic scheme they have around these cultural values or cultural beliefs. I got to know those things, and then I got to make sure that I say them in the meetings, and I got to make sure that I use the verbiage, and then that's how we keep the culture going. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. Like the furthest thing from the truth. I think the first thing it starts with when you're talking about culture, and you talked about like the leaders really being the ones to establish that, is you have to understand that when people are joining an organization or deciding to continue to stay in an organization, and they're making the decision around, is this something that I can do long term? Right? Is this something that I want to set up roots and grow? Is this something that I'm excited about, I'm on fire about, I want to be a part of? It really comes down to the fact that loyalty for your employees is really to a leader. It's not to the logo. You know, loyalty is to the leader and not to the logo. And so your culture is only going to be, one, as good if you've outlined these values or these beliefs, these tenets. It's only going to be as good as your leader's desire to really embody them, uphold them, and live by them. All right. So that's first and foremost. I think the other thing that's important is you can work for an organization that has a clearly defined mission and vision and all of that good stuff, right? But the culture can vary from department to department, site to site. They can be housed in the exact same building, and the cultures be so disparate, right, and just different because the leaders are different. And so I think there's an accountability or ownership on you as a leader, and whether you're developing leaders or setting expectations with your entry level leaders or new leaders to your organization. There's an accountability or ownership for them to understand just how much responsibility they have to be a good steward of the culture. The culture is you. The culture is what you bring to the table. The culture is how you carry yourself. It's how you conduct your business. It's what you value. It's how you treat people. You are the culture, regardless of what are in these walls and what's existed before you. You're the culture, right? You are the culture. And so, I think when people come to grips with that, then the culture becomes more of a tangible thing as instead of a transient type thing, right? Because I think sometimes we just feel like, okay, I come into the organization, whatever the culture is, I need to adopt to, and then if I move to another organization, well, I'm going to adopt to that culture, not realizing that really you as a leader, you carry the culture with you everywhere you go, right? You carry the culture with you everywhere you go. The tenets may change, the pillars may change, all that good stuff, but really you're the tone setter, the litmus test, whatever you want to call it. You're the person that is establishing that culture, and so you have an obligation to uphold those things, and to take that with a certain level of seriousness.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's not about the logo; it's the loyalty really is to the leader itself, and that had me thinking about the saying that people don't necessarily leave the company; they leave the manager, right? They leave the leader. And when you say that, that just really makes the point on how important it is for the leader to recognize the things that you just mentioned, that it really is about how they conduct themselves, how they see the culture, and how they are investing in continuing to nurture, to create the culture that exists.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk a little bit about mission and vision and stuff like that, because those things are important. But to your point, if you're just doing it just to do it, and like you said, and we've been there, right? Every meeting we come in, we're going to say these things, or we're going to ask these questions, and we're going to give recognition because it's part of our culture. It could just get a little tiresome, especially if you know that even though people are trying, it's just not real to folks, and they don't necessarily believe in it.
Well, and I think, to your point, not only are people trying, right, but if it's, and we've talked about this so many times in different episodes, but if it's an afterthought, then it's not done intentionally.
Exactly.
And if it's not done intentionally, then you're not really shaping and driving and molding the culture, right? Really, your culture is running away with itself, right? It's whatever the culture is because of what we allowed and what we embody, and then we are trying to find nuggets in that existing culture to say, oh, hey, this actually fits to what we said the values are. Right, this one thing that just happened, like, oh, that I just remembered, yeah, this is what fits to the values that we were talking about, right? But if you're really doing it intentionally, it's not an afterthought. It's not, you're not just going through the motions. It's not something that you have to be reminded of. And I do want to stop and just kind of share that, the examples we're providing and the things that we're talking about, or the examples we're sharing, are because I've reflected and I've been guilty of these things myself, right? When there's, what are the pillars again? Oh yeah, we're supposed to start meetings this way, right? We're supposed to, hey, does anybody have a recognition story that they want to tell? And so it comes across like you said, a bit disingenuous because it's always in hindsight.
Yeah.
And not necessarily intentional. And I think that's one of the things, if you've been listening to us for a while, that we continue to try and harp on from a leadership perspective, the importance of intent, the importance of being intentional as a leader, doing things with a purpose, purposeful leadership. All of those things are important. You can't cultivate a culture absent of intent and being purposeful, right? And I think, kind of coming off of our last series where we really started to get into, interviewing and hiring decisions and building a team and building a talent, I think that actually contributes to the culture formation too. If you're doing it right, a leader who's intentional about, bringing on, strong talent and developing a strong culture is going to have an affinity for bringing the best talent to the organization possible and not being intimidated or afraid of bringing on another strong leader, right? I just think that, when you think back to the interview process or the hiring process, that also sends a message to folks about the culture. Right, about the culture. If I'm going to go out of my way to hire individuals that I feel are not a threat to maybe what my personal aspirations are, or a threat to my authority or my skill set, well, then what culture am I establishing? I'm establishing a culture that says I don't value transparency, I don't value individuality, I don't value creativity or innovation. My culture is I need a bunch of people who are afraid of me and are yes people, right? And so you will see that started to reflected back at you off of something as simple as your hiring decisions, right? And how you decide who do you put in positions of power and that you empower. And I think, I just think that's critically important, is, again, being purposeful, being intentional, and then also, the hiring decisions that you make contributing to that culture. Again, we're not at the mercy of the culture that has already existed or, again, the organizational tenets and, themes that, get sent out via email and PowerPoint. Like, that's not the culture. That's not culture.
Even if there was a really good video made to talk about the culture and the values.
Yes.
With some awesome stars in there.
You did make a great video.
Well, I was just talking in that one. I didn't do the video myself, but
there's been other videos you've been part of too.
Yeah,
but,
I mean,
absolutely.
definitely. I mean, you and I have done some really good work previously. Focusing on the culture and helping employee engagement by really focusing on the culture and values and mission and stuff like that. So
yeah, I just think that's where it ends up falling short to some extent. I know we've been draining this topic, but I'd be remiss if I just didn't mention this. I think where it comes up short sometimes is that sometimes as leaders we make the mistake, and this is actually something I'm really proud of that you and I were able to do in our time together. But I think a lot of times as leaders, we make the mistake of dictating what the culture is and pushing it top down and just saying, all right, guys, this is what we're about and this is what we believe in, right? And the people that are receiving the message all the way down, they're like, oh, we do? Like, oh, that's what we believe in? Like, oh, I didn't contribute to this at all, right? And so that's where you lose the intent because I was never vested. Right. I was never vested in formulating that. I never had to say so. This is something that you told me I believed in, I believe in, and I have to adhere to. So it becomes more of a mandate, and then that's when you get the afterthought, and that's when you get people, trying to find the pockets in the culture that really exists that aligns with the culture that's supposed to exist. And so that's why, again, I was really proud of the work that we were able to do together, over the past couple of years, where we went the other route and we said, well, we got the leaders together, like, what is our culture? What's important? What is it? And then got agents together, and we said, we did, feedback sessions. Like, what is our culture? What does it mean? What does it mean to work for this organization? What do you think are the things that are important that you value? What do you appreciate about this environment? What are the things that you don't appreciate about this environment? And we use that to formulate the culture, to honestly to bring the news back to the business that says, hey, we talk to folks, we talk to the leaders, we talk to the agents, the people who are doing this stuff every single day, and this is what you guys said our culture is. So let's put it in a theme. Right, let's take what you've already established the culture is, and let's just put it in a theme, and then advertise that and market our culture, because we do have something special that's going on here. And if we want to attract more like-minded individuals, we got to go out and we got to tell the good news.
Exactly.
We got to tell the good news about what we're actually doing, because I think that's the last thing I'll say is when it's not intentional and it's not purposeful, and people don't have a say in formulating the culture, and it's just top down and I got to adhere to this. What happens is you end up going to market as this is our culture, right? And people find out about it, or they're sitting in the interview in HR or in the interview, and they're looking at the wall and they see all these things you stand for. Maybe they end up joining the organization, and then they get out in front of the people doing the work, and they're like, oh, this ain't like this doesn't match what was on the wall.
Yeah,
like this is not the culture. Right? Oh, there's actually another culture. This is the real culture. And had I known this, maybe I would have made some different decisions, right? And so I just think that's important, is being purposeful, being intentional, allowing your team, allowing your leaders and your agents, the people who are actually contributing to the culture, to have a say in defining what the culture is. What is this thing that we're doing? And then from there, marketing that effectively and upholding it as a leader.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about employee engagement, and, for those, one, we invested time. It really took us probably about 5 months. And just to give a little bit more specifics, not that it was just the two of us. I think we were really driving this mission that we were on, to work with the team, with the leaders, with the frontline folks, to create the mission statement for the group that we were working in, the call center that we were working in. And put in, and really invested a lot of calories and being patient through that process. But a large part of that, because the other portion of that, which we're going to get into, was we were going through training sessions and developing the managers and really having them focus on their leadership and who are they and how do they fit into this culture, and all of those activities that we were doing and this path that we were walking people down. It helped them to be engaged in what we were doing, and they felt like there was a purpose to what we were doing. They felt like they were valued because they were all high contributors to what we were doing and the end result. And again, when you're in a culture and you feel like my role has purpose, this business and what we're doing has purpose, whether that's in the community or in the world, depending on the company that you work for, that just makes you feel good. And when you feel like there's value in the work that you're doing and the leaders value you, then that's the type of culture that you'll see people thriving in. And within that, making sure that there's trust there, and to build trust is that there's transparency. So when you have all of those things going on, again, it just makes it easy to work, to have fun, to be focused, to want to do even more work, and then having fun in celebrating the success of what we're accomplishing. Absolutely. In ways that are like super meaningful to people.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll say about it before we transition to the next topic, because I think the other thing that is hard for leaders and organizations sometimes to wrap their mind around when you're talking about this, like you're saying, okay, it took us a 5-month process and we really invested in their training. And when we say invested, like legitimate investment, like there were, I approved Saturday training sessions so that we weren't taking people away from the day-to-day grind, which meant that for every single leader, we had about 20, 25, 30 heads. And I think the bulk of them actually, outside of our senior leaders, so about 20, 25 or so, were hourly. So approved overtime, right? Like it's a legit investment, right?
We invested in lunch, so there was, monetary investment as well. There was time investment. Yeah.
But so when you talk about that, I think it's hard sometimes for organizations or leaders to wrap their mind around, well, what is going to be my ROI? What's going to be my return on investment, right? Like these things are all kind of like they're intangible. There's kind of like some fluff ideas, right? Like how is this really delivering results? And I'm happy to say I'm a firm believer that um, the work that we did, the work that we were doing around driving the engagement of our leaders, bringing them into the fold, investing in them, defining the culture for the organization, talking directly to the people, having them define what it is that makes us that special. What is that special sauce that we possess? What makes us us? Using that to align them to the broader vision for the organization. If you recall, that was also during the time period where, for the first time in the history of the contact center, we broke the bonus plan.
Mm-hmm.
We broke the bonus plan, and just so you guys
I
know,
do remember
the bonus plan. The bonus plan. Just for additional clarity, the bonus plan was tied to the profit margin for the business, right? It was tied to profitability, and so for the first time in the time that I was there, as a department leader and working my way up, right? For the first time for all of those leaders, honestly, it was the first time that we hit 200% payout, right? So when you talk about what is the ROI, well, our bonus was tied to the profitability of the company, right? With accelerated targets in order to get a multiplier in the payout. And so when you talk about what did we contribute to the results, we contribute enough to get 200% payout on the bonus plan by focusing on the fluff, as some people will call it, right? But that just shows you the real impact and the value of that type of work and effort.
And we've mentioned this before, in business, it's not about the products itself. It's, the business is really about the people. So when you invest in the people, they'll invest back. And you'll see it in ways that do show up on the bottom line and on a spreadsheet somewhere, and sometimes don't. But there's always that residual effect. So, so the culture is important. Again, it's not just about the culture that's provided from the organization, but also realizing that it's the people and the leaders that make up that culture. And if you missed the episode, we have one called Culture Each Strategy. Each Strategy, exactly. So it's important that you're working to foster a very fertile and positive culture, so that when you start talking about strategy and trying to implement tactics, you have a really, really good shot at doing that, because you have a culture that will foster the acceptance of those things and the desire and the competency and skill sets to go ahead and implement those new strategies. So boom, culture was number one. The second one is organizational behavior.
Yeah. So kind of, picking up where I left off, right? Because we talked about the tangible results of focusing on culture. I think in addition to not just, kind of the culture tenets, right? Foundationally, as a leader, it's important that we uphold the standards around the behaviors of our culture, or of our organization, the success of our organization. And so, when you think about organizational behavior, what we're talking about is how effective are we at tying back roles, responsibilities, goals, and aligning that with the organizational goals of the company, of the business, and then how do we ensure that people's strengths are aligned as such, right? And you and I were kind of talking about this. How I process that is you have to be pursuing excellence, right, from a results perspective. As much as it's fun to go into an environment where you can laugh, you can joke, you can kiki, you get camaraderie, you're getting development, somebody's having conversations with you about how you can advance, all that other stuff, right? That stuff is extremely attractive, but it will get old very quickly if you're not putting W's on the board, right? If you're not putting W's on the board. Because people naturally, they want to be associated with something that's successful. Right? They want to contribute to an organization or to a team that is winning, right? And in some ways, it's funny because it's cyclical, right? That a strong culture and a strong emphasis on culture will feed the results,
Mm-hmm.
right? Can drive the results, and then strong results can reinforce the culture, right? But if you don't have strong results, at some point people start saying, well, do we have the right culture?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this the right fit, right? Like, think about, again, all of the companies or the organizations, sports organizations, whatever you want to use, that are successful, right? Whether it's Disney, haha, so y'all thought I was going to use a sports analogy, but I didn't do it, even though I thought about it. But think about Disney, right? Disney has a reputation, they have a culture that they're known for, right? Making magic happen. But understand that the reason why Disney is the gold standard is because the results are exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
Disney is $100 billion company. All right. There is no other theme park that can compete with their level of excellence. Probably, you can argue, no other entertainment or media conglomerate that can compete with their level of loyalty, excellence, and how they do things. Right. We were just talking about the fact that for next year we booked a family trip on a Disney cruise.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And just like, they say Disney is supposed to, this is the best cruise experience you can get. And like, without even really digging into the facts, just like we both just kind of accepted, yeah, Disney don't play, right? Because their culture has that type of reputation. But understand that if they weren't producing strong results, that culture wouldn't be reinforced or validated. So how do you drive that parallel in your organization as a leader, right? You can be transparent and people oriented and all that good stuff, right? But if we're also not contributing to success and strong results, that culture is then not reinforced. People start to question that culture. And I had a leader that I was talking to that it really put it into perspective, or resonated with me. Kind of some of these thoughts that I've been mulling over in preparation for this meeting or for this pod, right? When he was sharing with me his journey, his career journey.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, I knew like he had to make a career decision at one point. There was a company that was pursuing him. I'll use the names, right? So Amazon was reaching out to pursue him, and it's like, hey, we really want you to join, Amazon, help us out. We're, doing X, Y, Z. We really want to grow this exponentially. There have been people that worked with him, and his current company, his current employee, he was with eBay at the time. He had joined eBay like right before eBay popped, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then eBay, popped and became eBay in the 90s, and all the unmitigated success that they had. But then they started to peter off, right? They started to peter off, and then there was this, scrappy upstart Amazon, and what is this all about? And now they're competing in the same space, because if you really think about it, at one point, or this may be news to people or not, but like eBay and Amazon, they were competing in the exact same space. I mean, Amazon was on the upswing, so they were trying to take market share from eBay, and eBay had already been the preeminent player in terms of online retailing, and allowing people to purchase, right? And he was going back and forth with the idea, and he was like, nah, I think I'm good where I'm at, until he had one experience that really solidified for him the need to move on. And it was, he walked into to a break room, right, at one of the sites. And there were leaders that were up against the walls. Like, we've all seen the classic potluck scene and whatever, right? And so they had these cupcakes, right? So they had a bunch of cupcakes out that they were handing out. They were doing like a celebration. There was balloons and all that stuff, right? And so he's walking up, he's like, oh, just kind of chopping it up, like, hey, what are we celebrating? Right, like, is it site anniversary or somebody's anniversary, or because like we've been here for longer than like 4 years, but I'm seeing that there's these number 4s on the cupcakes. Like, what are we celebrating, right? And the site leader, at the time was like, oh, we're celebrating because the company, like, we just ranked 4th out of all the other companies in the industry in customer satisfaction. We were celebrating rating 4th. And he said in that moment, he was like, oh, I need to leave.
Yeah.
Right? Because now the results nobody was satisfied with, but then to celebrate the results was to reinforce this expectation as a part of the culture. Right? And I don't want to be a part of a culture where fourth is acceptable.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a part of an organization where we measure winning as we finished fourth. We finished behind 3 other people.
In most competitions, there's only like 3 spots on podium anyway, and you're talking about fourth. And
like, you can celebrate like standing next to the guy that's in third place. Like, how awkward would that be at the Olympics if bro just like walked up like, yeah, man, we did it, we gave him hell. Like, bro, you're not even on the podium, you're on the grass. Oh yeah, I know, but it was just, I just want to thank everybody. Like,
fourth
this is
place.
Phenomenal. Yeah, I'm going to Disney after this. I'm going to Disney World. Like, Disney's not even going to let you in, bro. You got to pay the ticket. We're not letting you in for free. Now you're fourth place. You pay the ticket, and we may give you an upcharge because you're celebrating that. But that's why it's important when you think about like the organizational behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
You still have to be in pursuit of excellence, and you have to define what that looks like. And the only way that you can do that is by aligning people's goals and their strengths to the broader goals of the organization. We have to steward that. And so I think it's important to stress that foundationally, especially for new leaders, because essentially what I'm getting at is you can't just be a cheerleader.
Yeah.
You can't just be satisfied with, giving people high fives and making them feel good. And we gave it the old college try, right? Because at some point, while people will appreciate you as an individual, they'll appreciate your leadership teams and their unique personalities. The impact and effectiveness of your ability to influence people will wane because they're looking at results. Why would I want to continue to listen or follow somebody who cannot produce success? Why would I want to be associated with that?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter at what level of leadership you're at, people will feel this way. It doesn't matter where you're at in your career, people will feel this way. It doesn't matter what their motivations are, even if they have no aspirations of trying to grow, they will still feel this way. It is the same reason why you have athletes that will turn down multi-million-dollar contracts to losing organizations to take lower contracts, right? Less money for a organization that has a culture of winning and excellence, because damn it, the money don't hit the same when I'm always losing.
Yeah.
Right. The personal success doesn't hit the same when I am always losing. Nobody wants to be the best of the worst.
Yeah.
Period.
Exactly.
Right. And so as a leader, we have an obligation to also hold that up when we're talking about driving engagement. It's not just that culture and making sure that people are clear about the kind of the mission and the vision and what we hold true to, but also that we are in constant pursuit of excellence and aligning those things. And again, if you're doing it right, the culture will feed the results will reinforce the culture, and you got that thing humming for sure.
Yeah. One other thing that I wanted to mention too is because there's specific moments in time where I just think that we, not just you and myself, but the other leaders within our group, like we just really did a good job. And when you talk about transparency and building trust in folks, is, how do you respond in pressure situations? And are you demonstrating composure in those situations? I just, I think about my wife because, Stacy to the extent that she's just very cool, calm, and collective. And I see things that, as any family or marriage that you go through, and just how she remains in that state and just has that composure. And I think about, we've been through, going through a bankruptcy, with the company that we worked with, and probably one of the hardest moments and times that we've been through, and the conversations that we had to have with people, and how as a leadership, like you had to maintain your composure to be able to continue to inspire and provide hope in people. And like you said, knowing that we at no time do we accept mediocrity, but definitely like we have to win, like we have to continue to fight and make it through this. And when you show your team that again, you're composed in a situation, that you have a plan that you're willing to implement, and you have a good handle on things. Again, that just continues to build trust within the team itself. The other situation I think about So you mentioned, making investments in time and, being there on a Saturday. And I remember, getting together as a team and realizing that, um, we have classes that we need to fill and we have spots that we need to fill. And as a leadership team and as a training team and as an HR recruiting team, we put this strategy together and we're preparing for this Saturday to have this big job fair. And we were going to have, I think, one of the buses from another company to make sure like the drug testing was done on that same day. And I can't remember if that was a specific one where we were even doing some advertising like on radio, whatever, but everything was leading up to that day, right? And we had a pretty good turnout, and the weather just wasn't the best, and it starts raining, but then as for our folks in Florida and Central Florida, you just know kind of the torrential downpour that can start at times, and so long story short, we had people in cars doing tests, and the place, it was just water coming through the roof. We had like tiles falling. It was just like one of the craziest scenes that you can ever see. And when you talk about leadership, I wasn't there for this particular part. I think I had Ray bouts, but but I definitely heard the story of you, like jumping on desk and getting buckets and covering up computers and making sure that the equipment wasn't damaged. So one, it's the behavior that you exhibited as a leader to make quick decisions and to put yourself out there. But again, and all of us did this, and shout out to Ricky. He's going to be our next guest on the 4th installment of the NBA series, Ricky Baez. But everybody just remained calm in that situation, especially, again, when we're trying to make a good impression on candidates that we're trying to interview and hopefully have us join the team. But it's important, I think, looking back on those situations, like, while it definitely wasn't a good situation, just because of the damage and stuff that we had to deal with after that. But we were, I think, very happy and proud, and rightly so, of how everybody from a leadership perspective really conducted themselves in that time. And people watch that, frontline agents watch that, a candidate coming in to potentially, like, is this the place I want to work at? What type of culture do they have? What type of behaviors does an organization exhibit? Knowing that they have people that are willing to do whatever, especially kind of in a crisis situation, but keeping that composure. Like that sells itself, man.
No, absolutely. Honestly, I look back to that moment as one of the reasons why we've been able to be, we were able to be so successful in those periods of uncertainty. Later on in the organization, and it was literally a situation where we had the building falling down around us, and again, I was on cubicles, and we're moving trash cans, and we're covering up computers, and we're moving people to areas where there's no leaks. But then it just continued to accelerate and exacerbate, and the next thing you know, the power goes out, and then now you have to exit the building because the fire alarm is going off, and we still got candidates that were in the middle being interviewed. Ricky's getting his HR team to do interviews in their car to finish up, and we made the decision. We finally pulled the plug and decided, hey, we need to let everybody go. Like there's it's not a safe environment, and I'm going back in the building in the dark trying to find people's purses because they left in a hurry. And so I'm going, okay, what did your purse look like? Where were you sitting at? Okay, cool. Walking and grabbing purses, and then after all of that, to have to stay to get the damage remediated, and that happened on a Saturday. And I think the proudest part of that story is that the building opened up and was operational the very next day on a Sunday.
Yeah.
When everything fell down around us. And so I think, to your point, people look to that and they say, well, okay, that's the mettle of this leadership team. Like, they're going to prioritize me. They're going to make sure that, they're thinking of me first in everything that they do, because we didn't want to pull the plug on people being able to earn money, right? And then at some point we had to prioritize, like, no, your safety is more important than any of this other stuff. There's not a redundancy plan. We don't have another site that we can send to, but we need to shut all this down, right? And then how do we get the building back operational and the environment back safe and as quick as possible. And for us, like next day had to be the option because this is other folks' livelihood, right? Like they have to eat. I think people looked at that and we earned a lot of credit so that when all the other things uncertain that came up later on down the years were uncertain, it was like, I already know that they're going to take care of us or they have our interest in heart because like the building, I saw how they responded when the building was literally falling down around us. This is not that. Like they got this.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, really, yeah, good call out. It's an awesome memory and story. When you're removed from it,
It wasn't awesome in the moment. Yeah.
Oh no, I promise you, I'm gonna look because I'm pretty sure like I have pictures and video. If that's the case, I'm gonna shoot it to you and maybe we can include it in the podcast episode so people just see the real of how that situation looked. Post exiting the building. It was bad.
It really was. But again, that speaks to just organizational behavior and demonstrating composure. So we touched upon culture, organizational behavior. The last tenet that we're going to speak about in regards to employee engagement is employee development. Something that we're both super passionate about. I think we're passionate about all these things, but that's where the coaching really comes in, and coaching and training and learning and development and opportunities to get in front of people and just kind of run your mouth and stuff like that in training sessions. But it's super important to invest in your people, right? And we talked about earlier about return on investment. What type of return are you going to get in the time and calories that you invest in your people? And you mentioned before that when we talk about developmental conversations, like every conversation you have with your team members should really be a developmental conversation. And I think depending on where they're at in their career, they may be thinking, I want these conversations to be about career development and how can I continue to move up and progress, which are definitely important conversations to have. But how do we also just kind of on a normal, monthly, official kind of monthly review, how do you help them to develop skills even in those conversations by talking about what their goals are? What are we trying to hit at the end of this month? And then how do we reverse engineer the steps that you're going to need to take to be able to hit that goal in the next 4 weeks? Or if we're looking at a quarter, looking at over 90 days, even those things, that's in itself is a skill. Some people are not, they're just not adept about, how do I really recognize what the goal is, and then how do I put an action plan together to help myself strategically go through the next 4 weeks or 3 months to hit that goal. So all of those things should be, again, all those conversations are really developmental conversations that you're having with your people, and in doing so, it really does help when, as a leader, you're engaging in those conversations on a consistent basis. I know, we tended to have conversations maybe once a week, with our leaders and our team members. But at least having one that's kind of that formal, coaching conversation that you would have, especially at the beginning of the month, right? But those things should be engaging conversations. You should be looking to develop their skills, their knowledge base, within those conversations and in those moments, and make sure that, when you're doing so, the feedback is on point. The feedback that you're providing them is specific, it's detailed, and the things that you expect, and it's specific and detailed in maybe observations you made on things that you would like to see them work on, so that there's acceptance of that, there's an understanding of those things, and then they have a good idea of the steps that they need to take moving forward. So engaging in these conversations, developing your direct reports, making sure that you're providing really good feedback and that you're getting feedback from them on the interactions, because we don't always have it all figured out, right? So how do I make sure that I'm doing right by this person and I'm not just going in there, like we talked about culture, right? Like it's just something that I'm doing because I have to do it, and I'm not being intentional about the conversation and this interaction that I'm going to have with my team member.
Yeah, there's that word again, Mama. There's that word again, intentional. Right?
Intentional.
I think the other thing too that you kind of hit on or alluded to, not only that these every discussion or every conversation, every interaction should you should be seeking to be a development the conversation. Like somebody should get something from it,
Yes.
right? But also, I think when you're doing it right, when you talk about driving engagement, um, it is also about intent, right? Like if it's coming from a place, right? So if you're having development conversations coming from a place of your own self-interest, right? And you're not really concerned necessarily about what somebody aspires to or what their next steps are or what they want from themselves, right? But we're calling it development, right? Development is I got to convince you to apply for this role even though you want to be an individual contributor, because if I get you in this leadership role, then that'll open up this, and then I can promote somebody else, and then when I move off to something else, like if it's all rooted in some type of self-serving reason, um, then people feel that, and people feel that in the interactions, and then you undermine the entire employee development process and conversation, right? It's just cheapened. I was sharing with you a recent experience I had where somebody that I've worked with in the past reached out to me out of the blue. Again, we've had no conversations, no interactions for like 6, 7, 8 months, and then even prior to that, when we worked together, the interactions were always rooted in self-serving for them, right? What they could get from it. And so I peeped that, I felt that, I peeped it so I could feed them with a long spoon, right? But just randomly out of the blue, right? You want to take interest in my career. When you've moved on to something else, I've moved on to something else, and I already knew what time it was. I had no interest in really engaging in the conversation, and I made it very apparent I was happy with where I'm at, right? To drive that person away, and that's again, it's because I knew that it was not genuine. The intent was off. And then I think about an example of where, when the intention is coming from a place of, truly, looking out for what's in the best interest of the person that you're leading or you're building the relationship with and you're developing. I can think of no better example than my experience again with our good friend Richard, right? And as we were going through the process, and you guys, our listeners have heard me kind of share, over past episodes, my experience with being furloughed and then finding a new opportunity where I'm at. But even in that period of uncertainty and getting ready to figure out, well, what do I do? Am I waiting around so that when the business is in a better position, they can bring it back, right? Or do I make the decision to see what else is out there? When he had the conversation with me, while I knew what was in his interest, which was, hey, I didn't, we want you back. Like, I want you back tomorrow if I can bring you back tomorrow type situation. For him to be able to say, look, my priority is making sure what's best for you and your family. You need to explore your options, explore what's out there. And when I called and gave him the news that I got an offer that I was going to accept, and I was going to relocate my family, and that I was going to officially resign from my position so that they can pursue backfilling. Again, I just remember the conversation vividly of like, man, I'm so happy for you. This is going to suck for me, but I'm so happy. So happy for you, and and again, that's the epitome, going back to what you mentioned about culture and transparency. He's one of those individuals I hold up there in terms of that standard of like, that's the gold standard for transparency, radical transparency. But when he said it, I knew it. Like I knew the intention was genuine. I knew, I felt it. Like, so I knew when I was making that call and giving him the news, like I knew, like, oh man, like he's not gonna be happy about this, but he's gonna be ecstatic about this. And those two things can exist, right? And I think it's important as a leader, you have to understand. Like for me, when I approach the development conversations with my team and I'm working on them, I engage in those conversations with the full intent of giving them every single tool that they need, that they can go off and leave me and leave this organization and leave this role and be wildly successful. It's not what I want, I prefer to continue to work with them and to see them grow and to see them blossom and to see them continue to contribute to the organization at a high level and be a part of that story and have a front row seat to their success. But I I go into the conversations, at peace and with the intention of I have to give them everything that they need to be successful, so that they have to make they have to make a decision around, do I stay here or do I move on to something else? And the only reason they would make a decision to move on to something else is because they're ready. The opportunity doesn't exist where we're currently at, right? And this is the better move for them and their family. And in that situation, even then, I don't lose.
Yeah.
I win. I win because I played a hand in that, and to be able to, I did my job as a coach, as a leader, right? Thinking about, a sports analogy. I'm gonna sneak one in. I know I didn't with the Disney, but I'm gonna sneak one in, right? But I think some of the best coaches, especially at the college level, are the ones that develop their players, and they encourage their players when they're ready to move on, right? Like, they're not trying to convince you to stay another year and we got to give them another run at this championship and all that. Like, if your stock is high, if I've taught you everything that you needed to know and to learn, and you're ready, and even if that may not necessarily align with where our organization is currently at, and it may not benefit our organization to see you move on, but if you're ready and it's what's best for you, I encourage you to go, right? I think about people like Nick Saban, Coach K, and Duke, those type of leaders. And it's why they elicit the level of loyalty, and why other talent, gravitates towards, wanting to be a part of that organization, right? I think that's the other thing as well that we don't really think about, but the better you are at developing high caliber, high potential, highly effective, highly competent, highly successful, highly skilled leaders in your organization, there's going to be a portion, the majority are going to stay with your organization and continue to grow and contribute at higher levels in different roles. But even the ones that move on, right, they go out into the world, into the marketplace, and they tell the tale and tell the story about how they received this phenomenal development. And that just makes you an even more attractive landing spot for other candidates in the marketplace who want to be a part of something like that, who say, well, damn, the only reason I'm still not, I left her is because, this place that it was my first opportunity to run my own spot, right? But I wouldn't have been prepared for this if I hadn't, worked in this other place and got some great development. So what are other candidates and other, potential high-performing individuals thinking? They're like, well, damn, I want to be a part of that. Let me, maybe I can get a similar experience, a similar type of development. That's a part of their culture, right? And that's what drives the engagement at the employee level. So, I think that's extremely important, is to make sure that it's done with the right intent. Again, back to that word, it's done with the right intent of what's in the best interest of the person that you're leading and you're developing, and not necessarily what is self-serving for you.
Yeah, if you want to really truly be a leader worth following, there has to be just a really strong level of humility and care for other people. So to circle back to the example that you made at the beginning, we were talking about culture and the leader who is looking to develop people that maybe are not as smart, not as intelligent, don't have the same skill set. The type of culture that they're breeding is one of fear, is one of self-preservation. And usually when you're in that mode, you're not looking to develop your people. So you're not intentional about the conversations that you're having. You're not intentional about how can I really help this person to get better at their particular job. And then even more than that, when it really gets good, man, and meaningful, and you spend time with people and there's longevity in that job and in those relationships, like, you're developing relationships, you're developing people, and not just the skill set that they have, but even having an opportunity to help somebody just develop as a person. And those things are again, they're very meaningful, very special when you have those opportunities. I remember one of the greatest things that I've ever heard from a leader that I worked with. He he finally got to a point where he was moving on from the company that we worked with, and um, it's awesome to see him still, like, I don't know, I guess it's been about 15 years or so, but just where he's at, I believe he's with Toyota and like an executive and just doing well in his family and just how he's grown as a man, right? But the thing that he told me when he left is, like, you didn't just help me grow as a leader or as an employee, like, you helped me grow as a man. And like, that was just such a meaningful and profound statement to hear that. And then you also realize, man, like, again, the true impact that you have on people's lives when you're talking about, this thing of leadership and how you're working with people. So it's not just helping to develop people's skill sets, their knowledge base. It's helping them, hopefully, having an opportunity to develop them as people, depending on where they're at, in their career, in their life. All of that happens because there's transparency, like you mentioned with Richard, very transparent in our conversations and the relationship that we have. All of that happens when you're intentional because there is care. So you're thinking about the next conversation and how can I make sure that I'm prepared for that conversation, and I'm thinking about maybe what they're going through and things that they've told me. How do I make sure that mentally they're in the right spot so that we can get some of this work done? But also, as we mentioned, is every conversation should be a developmental conversation, and not just for that person. Like, we're talking about learning and teaching. So as I'm going through that conversation, I'm also being intentional to see what else can I learn about them, about what's going on maybe in their life. What are their true desires and passions? And, even if it's just, say, like, yeah, I'm helping you develop, kind of from a corporate setting, but what kind of personal development are you doing? Like, what book have you read lately? What podcast have you listened to? Teach me something, you know what I mean? So that we're adding value to each other in those conversations, so that, again, it's always a developmental conversation, but it's not always just one way. Right. It's two way that you're learning from each other. And we should have that humility to recognize that, this person might be new in this leadership role, and I've been doing this for 20 some odd years, but there's always something that you can learn from other people as you're helping and teaching them and helping them along the way. So make sure that you're being intentional in your preparation, in the plans that you help your people to develop, in the conversations that you're having, and also intentional about what you can continue to learn from them in the process, because that shows transparency. I don't know it all. I don't have it all. But I'm also going to see what I can learn from you, and that continues to build trust in those relationships and with your employees.
Absolutely.
And just make sure that, the plans, kind of from a tactical perspective that you put together, that they're truly meaningful, for them, and that you're allowing them to really help in the goal setting, and then in what that plan should look like to allow them to hit that goal, that you're not just giving them everything, because you want to make sure that they own it. They own the plan, they own the goal, and they feel very confident and, again, passionate about, just chasing after and doing the things that they need to do to hopefully find that success at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter.
Well said.
So yeah, man, employee engagement, 3 specific kind of tenets of that culture: organizational behavior, and then employee development. 3 things that, again, are very important to building strong employee engagement. But within all of those realms, there's a couple of words, right? Being intentional about the culture, how you build that, about the behaviors that you exhibit, about how you develop your employees, and then the transparency that needs to be there in all of those different realms to ensure that you're really creating a place where people are engaged. They feel the purpose, they feel the vision. They not only want to come, like you mentioned earlier, come to work to have fun, but they want to come to work to do work. And that's fun for them. And winning is fun for them. And if we lose, because it happens from time to time, we learn from those things, we become stronger for it, and we continue to move forward, and move forward in success and doing what we need to do with excellence every single time. Any other last words?
No, I think, we did a good job of just kind of, draining these topics. And obviously, like, the one thing I will say is that these are not all of the tenets that, help drive high employee engagement, right? But these are the ones that you and I both felt were just the most critical to really, chop it up and kind of talk about and digest. as my father, has always, said to me, continues to say to me, just because how dads are, like, we have those sayings that we just don't ever let go, even if, like, I know you already got the message, but I'm just gonna keep saying it because I've been saying it for X amount of years. But he would just always stress to me that leaders are readers, right? Leaders are readers. And I think the bigger message there is that, right, leaders are always on a pursuit of learning, right? Leaders are always on a pursuit of learning, because obviously you can't read the podcast, but you can listen. It's even better. It's like listening to a book, right? So listen to us. But I share that to say that I strongly encourage our legacy leaders to explore what other components are necessary in order to drive a high level of employee engagement outside of the ones that we mentioned. And if there's anything that really resonated with you, or that you just have some thoughts on, we also know what it's like as leaders to benefit from having a sounding board. And people that you can just share your ideas and your thoughts and get them out there too. So I strongly encourage you, listening to, don't be afraid to engage with us either. Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt. Send us something on LinkedIn or Facebook or, Instagram, any of our social media, and just share your thoughts. Right. And if there's something that you really felt like, hey, you want more clarity on, or some additional insight, don't be afraid to engage us and to reach out and send a note. Or if there's something that you feel is just as important to contributing to a high level of employee engagement, like, we want to hear from you. Like, we're definitely interested in, engaging with this community that we've built. And I think that's honestly has been one of the coolest things about this, as I look at, the culture we established, we try to establish, we're establishing with the Legacy and Leadership podcast, and then how that culture is being reinforced through the results, and the results being, people listening, and the downloads, and the people following, and, growing all of these different platforms to the extent that we've been able to grow them to, and engaging with as many people as we have. The cool thing about it is being able to have the conversations with folks where people are sending us notes and tagging us and stuff, and sending me text messages, sending you text messages. Hey, this really resonated with me. Oh, hey, this is really cool. Hey, can you expound on this a little bit? I would love to hear a little bit more about this. Hey, do you have something tangible that you can give me so that I can work on that skill? Or, hey, I love to call out about this. Or, even the occasional notes that we get about our sports talk too. But this is not a sports podcast.
Low key, it is. We just dubbed it a leadership podcast. No, but definitely, point taken for our legacy leaders. Continue to, if you're listening to the podcast, whatever major platform you're on, leave a review. But within that review, leave us some feedbacks. And again, specifically for this episode, any additional aspects of employee engagement that you feel we didn't discuss that are important as well. If you're also watching the video itself on our YouTube channel, leave a comment. Again, leave a comment. Let us know what's up and how you feel about the topic, and any additional feedback, and again, aspects that you'd like to mention as far as employee engagement is concerned. So continue to do that. We definitely appreciate the feedback and talking to us, asking questions, giving us that feedback, because that just continues to drive us and what we do. And we are going to hold ourselves accountable, because we know that you're looking for a little bit more tangible items and tactics that we can give you and that you can use. So be on the lookout. It's funny that you mentioned, listening to listening to the book. Well, we have some things that we're working on. We are teachers. We are content creators. So again, be on the lookout for that. Hold us accountable. We got some really, really good things in store for you over the next few weeks, the next couple of months. So next episode, pay attention, keep riding with us. We're going to go to the next topic, in this really kind of expectations, not all of the expectations, but just a few that we want to touch upon, expectations for leaders. The next one is going to be continuous improvement, and breaking down again a couple of aspects of continuous improvement, some things that you should think about. So get ready for that. That is on the horizon. Step number 1, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast platform that you listen to and that you enjoy the most, because we're on all of them. So wherever you're at, we're going to be there. Find us, listen, download, subscribe. Step number 2, make sure that you, again, take a snapshot of the podcast that you're listening to, or if you're watching us on a YouTube channel, take a snapshot of that. Then go to Instagram, post it into your story, and then tag us, right? So you're going to tag Legacy Leadership. You're going to tag Devon at Leadership Docent, and then you can tag myself at Coach_Jimmie G Jr. Leave a little comments. And again, let us know that you're listening, that you truly appreciate what we're talking about, and add to the conversation. And let's really take this thing to the next level, because that's what we like to do. That's what we're here to do. Step number 3, share. Share it with your folks, share it with your family, share it with your friends, share it with other people, again, that you know need to be part of the Legacy Leader tribe, because they're out there, right? And again, sharing is caring, as I mentioned earlier. So share the podcast, share the YouTube channel, and let everybody be involved in the goodness that is the Legacy and Leadership Podcast. So on that note, I got my man, Anthony Devon Watts Jr., and myself, Jimmy Gonzalez Jr., saying thank you, take care, and God bless, and stay encouraged. We appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmy Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and leave a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.